everybody, Caleb here in the Rosa String Works Workshop, and I've got another one. This is a 1942 Martin 0018, or it used to be. I'll try to give you a good look. It's not really wanting to focus there, but there's the headstock. We got 3 ferrules out of 6, so we're doing pretty good. We got a fretboard with no frets. There used to be a big pick guard on there that covered up all that mess that you can see. If you heard that rolling around, there's a hole right here. And the piece that goes in there at some point was taped on, and now it's floating around on the inside. Let's see if I can't get it out. There's just a big piece of black tape and that missing piece. It was just on the inside. If you watched the 0017 that I worked on fairly recently, this is a lot like it. I think it's about the same size, but that 0017 had a mahogany top and, you know, mahogany back and sides, whereas this is a spruce top and mahogany back and sides. So it was a little different, but they're almost in about the same shape when we're getting started. There's 2 big cracks on the back, 3 big cracks on the back, maybe some other ones I haven't quite seen yet. The top's cracked right here. There's huge sections of wood missing from where the bridge used to be, where the pick guard was. It's all sorts of cracked and beat up. You can see the glue. The fret slots are kind of big. I wonder if they're even going to take frets. Somebody's been sanding the fretboard with some really low number grit, so really gritty sandpaper, and you can see swirl marks in it. I don't know if I can get it where you can see it, but there's swirl marks in the fretboard. I think it's from sandpaper. Most of the finish is off of here. Most of it. There's still some finish and along here and even on the neck still, and there's some on the back of the headstock. It doesn't look like they've touched the front of the headstock, which is good because the Martin logo is still there. I'm going to go ahead and set it down, and we're going to try to take a look on the inside and see what we can find that's wrong on the inside. So as I'm reaching my hand in here, I can feel spilt glue on the back all over the place. You know, not like a ton of it, but it's obviously run from somewhere, and I don't know what they re-glued that it's come off of. That's the kind of scary part. I'm trying to feel around on the top as well. There's some on the top. There's just like over the braces, like they put a ton in and it just kind of ran. I guess the braces aren't really loose, so that's good. You know, the top seems flat, which is kind of a surprise because usually, you know, in the older guitars, those bridge plates start to come loose, or the bridge would come loose and the top starts to bulge. But that doesn't seem like that's a problem. Something I'm noticing here is you can see at one point it had the bridge screwed on. You can see 2 holes on each side of where the bridge would have been. I don't know if Martin did that. I don't think that they did. I also think that there was another, you know, a second bridge on at least, not the original, because it kind of has a shape that, you know, the Martin bridges really didn't have. And, you know, you can obviously see that the pick guard was not the original pick guard. I've actually got the pick guard that was on here. It kind of looks more like the Gibson, the J series pick guards, the really big ones. Or is it the Hummingbird or the Dove? One of the ones that has the pick guard that comes all the way down. That's kind of what it looks like, which is, you know, far too big for this little guitar. I'm noticing more cracks in this. There's a crack here, crack here. On the right side, the neck doesn't seem loose. This is kind of suffering from I don't know where to start. I might start with this piece, try to get it glued back in. This piece here that goes here. I think if I go from the inside I can kind of push it back into place, and I'm hoping there's enough surface for me to glue it. I think if I sand this down a little bit I can probably get it in there. So I'll work on this a little bit off camera. If I get it going, I'll bring you back and show you. Alright, so I think I got it fitting in there. Well, I know I got it fitting in there, but I think I'm ready to glue it up. Well, it went in before. There we go. I'm actually going to go ahead and do this. And we can get that glued back on there. We don't have a hole in the side anymore. I'm still going to have to do a little bit of filling in there, but that's marginal compared to the big hole that was there. So I'll go ahead and give this some time to dry, and then we'll come back at it, figure out what we're going to do next. Well, while my other patch is still drying, I thought I might be able to fix this little break here. So you can see I got 2 wedges in there to wedge it open while I get some glue in there. This old Martin here. Jerry had an idea on, what to do around this bridge area that's torn up so badly. His current idea, or what he kind of explained to me, was that we would kind of draw a square around where the old bridge used to be, and then we'd route that out half the thickness of the top and then put in a new piece so we wouldn't have any of this really bad junk. We'd have a nice flat surface when it comes time to put the bridge in. The other thing we were worried about a little bit is the thickness of the top. And to find the thickness of the top, I'm going to try to use this tool that Jerry uses a lot when he's making mandolin tops. He uses this to thickness those. I'm going to try to get it in the sound hole. Not sure how I'm going to get that to work well. The idea was to use this, but if it's not sitting flat, and it's not going to measure right, it'd have to be sitting this way. Okay, well that's not going to work then. Jerry's worried that the top's too thin to do what we wanted to do. He said if it's only 50 thousandths thick, then we really can't trust that it's going to do anything good. And it's thin, just for argument's sake. How thick is it at the sound hole? It's still 100 thousandths thick at the sound hole. Assuming I wasn't sitting on any of that bracing. Actually, it's less than that. We're talking 90 thousandths. The thing is, since somebody removed all the finish, it's really hard to tell how much wood they removed as well. So we really don't know how thick this top is, especially right around here, or even at this deepest point. So it's a little worrisome to just, assume that it's 100 thousandths thick to cut down 50 thousandths and then find out that it was only 75 thousandths thick, and now I've just got the tiniest thin piece of wood left wherever I route. That's not what I want to do. So I guess I'm going to think about this a little bit more, figure out a good way to thickness this a little better. I'm waiting on a call back from the customer to decide what we're going to do with the top. Jerry has suggested that we replace it, but we're not going to do that without his okay. That's a big step for a vintage instrument. So the argument for a new top, I guess, we can kind of cover that. All the breaks in the top are one of the things. It's not the only thing that's making us lean that way. You can probably see up here, it looks like someone has sanded through the purfling. You can see it just kind of stops. That, amongst other reasons, is one of the reasons we're thinking that maybe the top's too thin. But also, I noticed this. Somebody glued a big plate on the underside of the pick guard. You can kind of see it there. And it's not glued on very well. It's glued on top of braces and so on and so forth. Between, the big plate, the fact that it looks like this top's been sanded too thin, the big cracks here and here, the crack along there, there's a couple of cracks on this side that are still open. We are leaning towards the idea of replacing the top. Now, ultimately, this is going to be the customer's decision. We'll be waiting for word from him as to what to do regarding the top, but until then, I'm going to go back to working on getting this thing cleaned up. Well, I was working on getting these old tuner holes filled, and Jerry decided it was vital to bring me this rivet he ground out of a windshield wiper. I just thought I'd show you so you all knew that Jerry does give me nice things. and now it's in the trash. So I've got these old tuner holes filled. There was a ton of them. This old guitar has been beat up. I don't know how many different sets of tuners, because you can see there's 2 for every hole, so they're, you know, at least double drilled. I think this is where I'm going to leave this for now. I'll work on something else for a while this dries and come back and knock these down and finish cleaning this thing up, I guess. Well, we've got word back from the customer, and we're going to go ahead and replace the top on this. So I've started working on getting the fretboard warm and trying to get it off, because we're going to have to get the fretboard off for me to get the top off.
My friend, he took one look at me and said, "Girl, where you been?" Well, I don't know that I can say, but I can try to explain. I've been searching for that sunny spot somewhere, but all I can find is rain. The place I've been sure wasn't sunny, but man, it sure was blue.
When I turned the camera on, I thought I'd have this fretboard off in the next 5 minutes or so, and it took a little bit longer than that, but I've got it off. While I was taking it off, I noticed that the neck was loose. We're going to go ahead and take the neck out as well. And that's what I'm getting prepped to do now. I've got some water getting to boil, so I got some steam to stick in there, but I'm going to drill a couple little holes so I can stick my little thing in to get some steam in there. And then we'll wait for it to steam up. Well, you can see I'm all set up here, and we've just started getting warm enough that it's pushing through the little tube. I'm going to work this in one hole and move it to the other and back and forth, and we'll try to get it out. Well, that neck came out real easy once it started. I think it was just maybe one spot holding it on there, so once it got warm and wet, it just came right out.
Been all around this wide world, and there ain't no friend like you. No, there ain't no friend like you.
There's all the binding off of it. I started off trying to save it, but it kind of occurred that we'll probably have to replace it all anyway. What I'm going to work on next is getting the top off. It shouldn't be too big of a job. It's loose in a lot of places, and when you don't care too much about tearing it up all that bad, it comes off a lot easier. I'll probably warm up the tools again to help break the glue, but you know, after I get that, we'll start working on getting this top off.
Well, he took me gigging and he took me fishing. We went swimming in the pond. My friend, he made me laugh and smile and said, "Where you been so long?" Well, I don't know that I can say, but I can try to explain.
Well, you saw me get the top off of here, and now you can see how much of a mess it is on the inside. That extra board somebody glued in, and they tore up that whole side of the X-brace and cracked along there and all throughout there. The other thing, I started measuring to see the thickness, and there's a spot where it's 75 thousandths thick, and there's a spot where it's 100 thousandths thick, and it is not consistent anywhere. So it's a good thing we're replacing it, I guess. I did have a heck of a time getting it off of there, and I chipped out a few pieces. And since I'm going to use this as my template to make the new one, I've gone ahead and started CA gluing a couple of the chips I knocked out back on, just so I can use it as a template a little bit easier. I guess the next thing for me to actually do is to go pick out some wood for a new top. Well, with some help from Jerry, I found a couple of pieces that are gonna work real good for what we need them to. I just need to thickness them. It'll work some of this out so it'll be nice and flat, and they're also fairly thick right now. I think they're almost 175 thousandths. Yeah, pretty close. So I'm gonna thickness these down to about 100 thousandths, and then we'll take a look at getting the top laid on top of here.
The place I've been sure wasn't sunny, but man, it sure was blue. Been all around this wide world, and there ain't no friend like you. No, there ain't no friend like you.
So we've got these thickness down to about 110 thousandths, maybe a little bit less, but I think that's where I'm going to stop. I want them at just about 100, and I'm going to probably end up doing some more fine sanding, that sort of thing. So I'll stop here and we'll see if we can fit that top onto here. Well, this top looks like it's going to fit, but just barely, but it's going to fit. So I've gotten ready to glue it up. You can see I've got both boards. I'm using the fence on the saw as one side, and I've clamped a board to the table saw on the other side, so when I pull this out and push it down, it should give me that clamping. I've got a couple things I want to use for wedges up top. I've got some parchment paper on top of newspaper on top of the table saw, so I'm not going to get any glue anywhere I don't want it. And I think we're ready to go. Put some weight up at the top. That weight helps push the pieces down and out so that it gets all the clamping pressure that way. Now that looks pretty good, I think. So we'll let this set up until tomorrow, and then we should be good and glued together. So this is all glued up now. This is going to be the new top for this Martin. I've been kind of looking at getting this lined up on here, and it's going to fit real well on this piece of wood. What I'll end up doing is holding it flat, because it's kind of got some bow to it, and then drawing the outline of it on, and then cutting it a little larger than that, just to be safe. And we'll probably use the top as well to figure out where the braces go. I can reference the top for the size of the braces. Anyway, I basically just glued up real well. There's still a little bit of a seam in the middle from the glue, and it just slightly didn't set even. I did leave these a little thick, so I should be able to get rid of that seam real well. I'm trying to decide what my next step really is, and it might be to try to get this laid out on here and draw the outline. That might be it. I'm going to take a couple of good looks at this and make sure I'm real happy with it, and maybe I'll have Jerry take a look at it, and hopefully we can get the outline drawn on here. So you saw me cut out part of the top. I hope you did before the camera ran out of space, and I didn't notice. So while I was moving files off of the card, I've been working on getting set up to do the rosette. I've got a trial piece I've been using, getting the depth right and the size of the circle right. And right now this is set to the outside of the big section of the rosette, the big one. And the way I've got this set up right now is to where my little black strip, which is going to be the outside of my rosette, fits in there perfectly. What I think I'm actually going to do is go ahead and transfer this over to the top, because it's set up so well right now. It fits in there perfectly, and it's just a little bit tall. And that's good, that's just the way we like them. So what I'll probably do is go ahead and take this piece off, get the top, set it on here. I think what I might do, just for the sake of checking, is I will measure from here, just a rough estimate. Just put a little pencil mark. Make sure that looks right. And then when I stick this on here, it should be right on that pencil line. Just doing a couple of things to, you know, final checks, make sure everything's gonna work real good. That seems really close. Yeah, that's gotta be pretty much it. So I think I'm good to go ahead and cut this. I am gonna go ahead and check the depth on that before I go anywhere beyond the fretboard. It's looking good. So I guess I'll go ahead and finish that circle off.
Place I've been sure wasn't sunny, but man, it sure was blue. Been all around this wide world, and there ain't no friend like you. No, there ain't no friend like you. No, there ain't no friend like you.
There it is. That'd be the outside of the main ring of the rosette. Fits right in there. Real good. Now what I'm going to do is work my way inside. So what I've actually done is marked with a pencil right here how far in I need to go. And that's for the thickness of all of my pieces combined. So I'll set the router back on here. I'm going to loosen this so I can move this in and out. That's about the thickness of a cut, so I'll probably just cut it. I'm aiming for about 150 thousandths thick. That should be about the size of all three of the pieces I'm putting in. And that will be the inside of that pencil line. So I'm kind of hoping I can maybe just make this in one more cut. Problem I'm having now is this is wiggling. It doesn't wiggle in the top, but it wiggles in here. That's not good. I'll try this. So I'm going to start on the other side again and mark my width. I've marked the width I want with the calipers on the wood, so all I have to do is slide the Dremel tool in to the mark, and then I should have the full width. It's pretty close. I think it's going to be close enough. We can try it on the top.
Don't leave Earth without him, I heard a preacher say.
I think it's probably looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and put the outside piece back in. And then we're going to put this in the center, and just another little black, white, black strip for the inside. I'm having trouble keeping these in now that the slot's a little loose. Well, I'm going to have to come up with something better, but I'll bring you back before I go on, I guess. Well, I've got the main ring of the rosette in, and I'm working on getting it down flat. I'm doing that with a combination of chisel and the finger plane. It's working, I just got to be careful because I don't want to eat into the top. I ended up using CA glue in a couple of spots to get this to stick in. I had to start at one end and then, you know, CA glue maybe the outside piece or the inside piece, wrap it around, get it tight, and CA glue it in on the other side. That held the inside piece in, and then I did the outside piece and just CA glued it in at one end, and then I'd fit the inside or the middle piece in. It was very fidgety getting all three pieces in and staying in and so forth, but eventually I got it, and then I just used some CA glue all the way around it. Now for the other two rings, I'm going to have to get a smaller bit to get these two black rings in, because my bit was big enough to do the black, white, black on its own, and these little black rings are smaller, so I'll have to go find a smaller bit to cut with. But before I can do that, I got to get this flat, and I probably could have just cut those before I glued this in. I didn't. Get this flat, and then I can measure the distance between the outside of the main ring and the little black ring on the top up here. And I can get it all marked out and do the same for the inside ring. And once I find my smaller bit, it should be real easy to do. I've still got quite a bit to go on this, and I'm still just trying to find what the best way to do it is. The finger plane's working the best because it's wide enough to get all 3 pieces at once, and I can have some good control over it because of how small it is, so I think this is the best way to go, or the best tool to use at least. I'm just not sure the best tactic on using it. This should get me most of the way, and when I get there, I'll bring you back. Well, when I got real close to the top, what I've broken out is the razor blade, and I'm just kind of scraping the rest of this off. It's still going to need some sanding, but we'll do that to the whole thing after we get the other 2 rings in. Right where they end, I've still got quite the high spot. Turned out pretty good. Now we can get started on the other 2 black rings. So I've got a smaller bit, and I've already pretty much got the depth set and actually the width set. And my black piece is fitting in there fairly deep. I've got a big strip of this black, and I don't really want to pre-cut it because I tried that with the last one, cut it to this, and it just ended up not exactly fitting once I got it on the top. So I think I'm going to cut the route in the top, and then I'll cut my binding piece to fit. It's looking really good. It's fitting in the slot really well. So I think I'm going to actually just call that good, and I'm really happy with the distance between what would be the outside of the main ring and this black one. So I'll go ahead and get us set up to do that on the top.
Oh, I care so much about him. I'm on my knees today, or I'm just a lonely pilgrim at the end of life's highway. And I know that I'm not worthy of my Lord's amazing grace.
Rather than gluing in my 2 little backs, or 2 little black outside rings, I'm going to go ahead and cut the sound hole, and then I can glue them all in. I can work on putting away all of my routing jig and all the circle cutting stuff, so I can get that all off my desk, because it's become quite clutterful.
My life, just like all others, has been filled with attempts and trials. But I've tried to overcome them as I've walked each weary mile. For I know He walks beside me.
So it's been a little while since I've worked on this, maybe close to a week. So I'm trying to get refamiliarized with this thing. I pretty much got the rosette scraped down. I think where I'm at is would be a good place for a good sanding top. So I'll probably stop here and move on from the rosette. I've still got a little bit of cleanup around the sound hole to do, but I'll show you the rosette. It's starting to look pretty good. Got the black stripes in, and I've been scraping them down. I think what I should start to think about is getting the braces laid out, making sure this seam is good on the inside, cleaning up the sound hole a little bit. There's just a little bit of kind of fuzziness around the hole, so I'm just kind of scraping it off. I should probably start thinking about the bracing in here, and we'll do that with the old top. We'll lay it on top of here, and then I'll mark where they are on the outsides, because this is still slightly large, so I can lay the old top on top, get a pencil, and then mark out where the braces are. So we'll do that. So I've got the old top sitting here now. I'm going to go ahead and just start marking where these braces are, where they end. This is the only one that's kind of worrisome, this one that's totally broken off. I think that's it. So those are my braces. What I'll do is I'll get a long straight edge and I'll actually mark them out where they go now. pretty close. I think one of them is slightly off because I'm not quite centered on the hole, and I'm pretty sure my sound hole is centered on my seam, so some minor adjustments, but this will give me a rough idea about where they go, so I'll just keep marking them. So that's going to be pretty close to where those are going to end up. You know, I'll do a couple of things to make sure that they're evenly spaced and so on and so forth. I noticed that these aren't exactly parallel, and they probably need to be, so a few adjustments. None of this is exactly permanent, but it should be close. So my next thing to do is figure out how big of braces I need to make, and I'm going to go through here and start measuring these braces. I'm going to start with the thickness of them, try to get where they're the thickest, and they're at about 270 thousandths, I think. Some of these have glue on them, so it's kind of hard to tell. This one's considerably thicker. We're up to 360 thousandths, 370 thousandths almost. The other thing I'll need to do is go through and check the height, see how tall they are, because the closer I can cut these down to, the less carving I have to do and the less brace what I waste. I'm trying to get them, you know, pretty close to the right size. I'll have to go based off the tallest point and the thickest point. So I'm going to go ahead and say 1/4 of an inch. Give me some room. This one's going to be taller, and I'll try to set it on here the way it came off of here and measure the height that way. So I'd say it's about 615 thousandths. I'll go ahead and write that down. I think we're doing pretty good. That's most of my bracing. Not the flat brace though, but most everything else I've got good measurements on, so I could start cutting out square pieces that would fit. The only thing I'd have to do is check lengths, and I can do that with the ruler. So I'll maybe start looking for some brace wood we can start cutting out. Well, you can see I've got a bunch of pieces cut for the bracing. This is all the bracing that isn't flat. They're all pretty much sitting next to the old ones. One thing I need to do is kind of clean up the edges. They're pretty close to the same rough size that the old ones were, just not carved yet. I'm thinking it's probably a good idea to go ahead and start getting these roughly placed on the top, get my 2X braces fitting together, and then I can start working on the flat bracing. So there's just a little bit of cleanup to do here, and then I'll start looking at getting them on the new top. Well, we got the Go bar system sitting over here now. I got them all fitting together pretty good. I'm fairly certain I'm just about ready to start gluing these down. You might see that there's a ruler in between these two braces here. I noticed on this one there was an even space, and it was about 1 inch, and that ruler is about 1 inch, so it's going to keep these equally spaced all the way throughout. So that's good for that. Everything else is fitting together pretty good, and it's looking pretty good, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Even when the worst is done, now I pray he walks beside me as my final races run. Don't leave earth without him, I heard a preacher say. Oh, I care so much about him, I'm on my knees today.
Well, I've got this all set up. You watched me clamp it all up and then clean it up a little bit, and I'm real happy with it. I think it's looking real good. And seeing as it's getting later in the day, I guess I'm going to leave this to set up until tomorrow. So this sat up overnight. This morning I started working on the flat bracing, and it's all fitting in there real good, and it's all looking real good. So I am ready to glue in all the flat bracing, including the bridge plate. I've already wiped the Paduke down with the acetone, so it should have every good chance it can have to get nice and stuck. So I think we're ready to go.
For I'm just a lowly pilgrim at the end of life's highway, and I know that I'm not worthy of my ever believe shall never die, but live with him forever.
Well, all these flat braces have sat up for a couple of hours. This is the first thing I did this morning, and it's now after lunch, so I'm going to go ahead and take these off and hopefully get started on them. So now that this is out of the go bar, I'm going to start carving these braces, and I figured I'd just start here. This chisel I'm using, a viewer sent me. I don't exactly remember which viewer this was. I think his name was Christopher or Christian. I don't remember, but thank you again. And you might have also just seen this chisel in Jerry's sharpening video. He sharpened it for me, so it should be nice and sharp, and I should be able to carve these down really quick. And it is very sharp. I am just basically going to make these match the old braces, how these braces were carved. I figured that's probably the best way to do it for bracing. That way it should be as similar as I can get it to the way this should have been. I've got a lot of carving ahead of me. I'm going to try to get these ends scalloped down. I'm going to start on the ends, and then I'll come back and I'll do more of the scalloping in the insides and the rounding over. There's not a whole lot to show, just me carving wood. I'll bring you back when I move on from knocking the ends off. Well, you can see I've got the ends started to get knocked off. They're starting to work their way out. These ones get kind of beveled down, and these ones just slope off. I'm getting close to wanting to start bevel these over, and what I'll do, and I mean at the tops, so I'll take the finger plane and do that. I'm going to start right here for no particular reason. And it doesn't want to cut that way, so we'll try this way. This one doesn't need a whole lot off of this side. We're just kind of rounding this one over. Most of the other ones kind of come to a bit of a peak.
In heaven's paradise, I kneel down before him on my final judgment day, and I beg.
So I've been working on this for a while, and I've been kind of getting to the point in which I'm cleaning them up for the most part. What I'm going to do right now is go ahead and glue some of that gauze that Jerry uses right on the center of the X bracing. I've got a couple of pieces of cut here. And I'm just going to use some white Elmer's.
The Lord forgiveness through my God's amazing grace. Don't leave earth without him.
That on there. I'll give that a little bit of time to dry, and I might trim a little bit off once it does. So while that top is kind of sitting and drying for a second, I'm going to start working on the back here. There's some glue that was spilt out and poured all over here. I'm going to work on, you can see I've started working on getting it carved out. So I'm just kind of carving away at this. I'm using the smallest chisel I got, I mean width-wise. The extra length helps me kind of get into the bottom without having to reach all the way into the bottom. I'm probably not going to film a whole lot more of this. There's a lot for me to get out of here. And I'm going to have to tag it a couple different ways. I just noticed there's more up here and a lot of cleaning out to do in the back of this guitar. So the top for this guitar is getting closer and closer to being ready. But before I stick it on, I really want to get these cracks in the back fixed, because they're going to be a lot easier to fix while the top's off. So I am going to try to glue up a couple of these real quick. I'm going to use some tight bond and try to get in there. I think it should do the trick.
I heard a preacher say, oh, I care so much about him, I'm on my knees today.
Alright, so now that I got the cracks on the back all taken care of, I've been working on getting this top fitting to the sides, and it's looking really good. Something I've been using to help me get everything aligned was I marked with pencil the seam on the underside where it overhangs, and I marked the center of the sides with pencil so I can get it nice and aligned. I did the same thing in the neck pocket so I can help get everything aligned, because once those two are centered it should be nice and aligned. And I think I'm getting really close to gluing this on.
For I'm just a lonely pilgrim at the end of life's highway, and I know that I'm not worthy of my Lord's amazing grace. Jesus makes me worthy of my God's amazing grace.
Well, now that this top is good and attached, I'm working on cleaning up the overhang, and I'm just using the little finger plane, knocking off the extra. So now that the top is glued on and we've got the lip cleaned up pretty good, what I'm getting ready to do is route the binding slot. This is the Stumac kind of rig. The guitar is in a kind of a mold that helps keep it flat, keeps the top and the sides at a 90 to the table, so everything's square in relation to each other. And then the router also stays square to the table with this bracket over here. So this way all we have to do is set it on there and it will cut a perfect binding slot all the way around. I've already been test cutting with this bit to make sure I was happy with the depth and the width of the cut, and I am. It's looking really good for the binding, and if I remember right, Jerry said it was easier to cut the binding slot and then the perf slot. That's what I'll do, is I'll cut the binding slot first and then the inner slot second. I think that's going to be the best plan of action. So I cut the binding slot and I didn't see any big problems with it, so I think I'm going to go on and cut the perf channel slot as well. I've already set it up. I tested it on a test board and it's looking good. So I think we're going to be able to do this just fine.
Bill Monroe is the father of bluegrass. He's the one that gave us all this joy. He picked up an old Gibson mandolin and formed a band called the Bluegrass Boys. He's known far and wide for his picking, and we've all tried to copy his style. Well, now for those of you who like to hear it, here's old JR to give it a try.
Well, I've got the slots all routed and they're looking good. I went through and cleaned up the edges just a little bit. I'm going to try to get this perf glued in. I'm going to use this canopy glue. It seems to work really good for putting plastic to wood. I've got the binding tape ready. I've also got the heat gun right here, just in case I need to warm it up to get around some of the turns. I think we're ready to do this.
Getting up there, but his music's as fresh as can be. One day he'll pick up in heaven, then we'll all hear that mandolin ring. So next time you're out in the evening, look and see if that old moon is blue. If it is, you'll know Bill is happy. He'll be picking some old bluegrass tunes guitar.
Well, you can see I got all the perf glued up. I'm going to give this some good time to set up before we do the binding. But when I do come to do the binding, it should be fairly easy. So I'll give this a little bit of time and we'll come back and do the rest.